Hey people, get ready to crush everyday TOEFL iBT tests for all modules and make your dreams come true. I'm your motivator and I'll be guiding you through the test prep videos. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe or you'll be missing out on some serious preparation.
Conversation 1. You will hear a conversation. A female student visits her academic advisor's office to discuss her academic plan and the possibility of adding a minor to her current degree program. First, you have some time to look at the 5 questions. Now listen carefully and answer the questions. Hi, Dr. Webb. Thanks for fitting me in on short notice. I've been thinking a lot about my academic plan lately and wanted to get your advice on something.
Of course, come on in and have a seat. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm a junior in the biology program, as you know, but I've become really interested in data analysis and programming. I was wondering if it's possible for me to add a computer science minor to my degree plan.
That's actually more common than you might think. A lot of biology students are discovering the value of computational skills, especially with how data-driven the life sciences have become. It's a very practical and recognized combination.
That's good to hear. I wasn't sure if the departments would allow it, or if it would even make sense given how many biology requirements I still have left.
Absolutely, the departments collaborate on this regularly. Now, the computer science minor requires students to complete 6 specific courses totaling 18 credit hours. 2 of those are introductory courses, and the remaining 4 are chosen from an approved list of upper division electives.
Oh, interesting. Actually, I took Introduction to Programming last semester as one of my free electives. Would that count toward the minor?
Yes, it should. That's one of the 2 required introductory courses. So you're already one step ahead. We just need to verify the course code to make sure it was the right section.
That's a relief. But honestly, I'm a little worried about the workload. Between my biology lab courses and the research seminar I signed up for next spring, I'm not sure how I'd manage adding more courses on top of all that.
That's a very legitimate concern, and I wouldn't recommend taking more than 1 CS elective per semester during your heavy biology semesters. If we spread the remaining 5 courses across your junior and senior years strategically, it's very manageable.
Would I still be able to graduate on time, by May 2028?
Based on what you've told me, yes. With 1 course already completed and a careful schedule, you can finish both the biology degree and the CS minor within the standard 4-year timeline. Let me pull up a sample course plan so we can map it out together right now.
That would be incredibly helpful. Thank you so much, Dr. Webb. I feel a lot better about this.
Happy to help. Let's get started on that plan.
That is the end of the conversation 1. You now have some time to answer the questions. Conversation 2. You will hear a conversation. A male student visits the university's financial aid office to speak with a staff member about a recent change to his scholarship award for the upcoming semester. First, you have some time to look at the 5 questions. Now listen carefully and answer the questions.
Excuse me. I received a letter last week saying my merit scholarship was reduced for next semester, and I honestly don't fully understand why. I was hoping someone here could help me figure out what happened.
Of course. I'm Patricia Chen, and I'll be happy to help you look into this. Could I get your student ID number?
Sure, it's 774291.
Thank you. Let me pull up your account right now. Okay, I have your record here. It looks like your merit scholarship was reduced because your cumulative GPA fell below the minimum required threshold of 3.0 at the end of last semester.
A 3.0 GPA requirement? I had absolutely no idea there was a GPA condition attached to the scholarship. I don't think that was ever clearly explained to me when I first received it.
I understand your frustration, and I'm sorry this wasn't clearer up front. The requirement is outlined in the scholarship terms and conditions document that students receive with their award letter. That said, those documents can be lengthy and easy to overlook. Your GPA came in at 2.87 last semester, which unfortunately triggered the reduction under university policy.
I see. How much was the scholarship actually reduced by? The letter wasn't entirely specific about the dollar amount.
Your annual award went from $6,000 down to $3,500. The reduction follows a graduated scale the university applies based on GPA ranges.
That's a significant difference. I used that scholarship to help cover both my tuition and my rent. Losing $2,500 is going to put me in a really difficult financial position.
I completely understand, and I'm truly sorry you're facing this. There are a couple of options we can look at together. First, if your GPA recovers to 3.0 or higher by the end of the spring semester, you may be eligible to have the full scholarship amount reinstated starting next fall. Second, you can apply for a financial hardship grant, which is entirely separate from the merit scholarship and has no GPA requirement.
A hardship grant? I didn't know that existed. How much does it typically award?
Awards generally range from $500 to $2,000 depending on your demonstrated financial need. I can give you the application form today if you'd like to get started right away.
Yes, please. I'm definitely frustrated about this whole situation, but I want to do whatever I can to stay on track academically and financially. I really appreciate you walking me through this.
Absolutely. Let me print the application form and also give you the contact information for our student financial counselor, who can help you map out a plan for the rest of the academic year. That is the end of the conversation too. You now have some time to answer the questions. Lecture 1. You will hear part of a lecture about biology. Plant adaptation strategies. First, you have some time to look at the 6 questions. Now listen carefully and answer the questions.
Alright, let's get started. Today we're going to talk about how plants have evolved remarkable strategies to survive in some of the most challenging environments on Earth. Now, when we think about adaptation, we're talking about heritable traits that increase an organism's fitness in a particular environment, traits shaped over generations by natural selection. Plants, unlike animals, can't simply move when conditions become unfavorable, so they've had to develop extraordinarily diverse mechanisms just to stay alive. Let's begin with drought adaptation. In arid environments, plants face the constant threat of desiccation. One of the most well-known strategies is succulence, the ability to store water in thick, fleshy tissues. Cacti are the classic example here. Their stems have evolved to function as water reservoirs, and their leaves have been reduced to spines, which minimizes surface area and therefore reduces water loss through transpiration. But there's another layer to this. Cacti also use a specialized photosynthetic pathway called CAM, or crassulacean acid metabolism. Unlike most plants that open their stomata during the day to take in carbon dioxide, CAM plants open their stomata at night, when temperatures are cooler, and store the CO2 as an organic acid. During the day, they close their stomata to prevent water loss and use that stored carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. It's an elegant biochemical solution to a physical problem. Now, moving beyond deserts, let's consider plants adapted to extremely cold environments, what we call alpine or tundra plants. These plants face a different set of challenges: short growing seasons, freezing temperatures, high winds, and intense UV radiation at altitude. Many of them have adopted a low-growing, cushion-like growth form. This keeps them close to the ground where temperatures are marginally warmer and wind speeds lower. They also tend to have small, thick, waxy leaves. Again, that wax cuticle reduces water loss, but in cold climates it also provides a degree of insulation and UV protection.
Student, Professor Hartwell, I was reading about carnivorous plants like the Venus flytrap. Would those count as an adaptation to a specific environment? Like, is it about nutrients rather than water or temperature?
Excellent question. Yes, absolutely. Carnivorous plants represent an adaptation to nutrient-poor environments, specifically soils that are extremely low in nitrogen. The Venus flytrap, the sundew, pitcher plants, they all evolved mechanisms to capture and digest insects or other small organisms precisely because they can't obtain sufficient nitrogen from the soil. The cost of developing and maintaining these trapping structures is offset by the nitrogen gain. This is a perfect illustration of a key principle in adaptation biology: adaptations are always trade-offs. No adaptation is free, it requires energy and resources to build and maintain. So whenever you see a highly specialized structure, ask yourself, what is the organism gaining, and what is it giving up? That cost-benefit logic runs through all of evolutionary biology. Finally, I want to touch on salt tolerance in halophytes, plants that grow in saline environments like salt marshes and mangrove forests. Most plants cannot survive high salt concentrations because the osmotic pressure of saltwater would cause their cells to lose water and shrivel. Halophytes have evolved various mechanisms to cope. Some actively exclude salt at the root level, others compartmentalize salt ions into special cellular vacuoles where they can't interfere with metabolic processes, and others actually secrete excess salt through specialized glands on their leaves. Mangroves, for instance, use a combination of these strategies, and some species even have prop roots that help them anchor in unstable, oxygen-poor mudflat sediments, so we're seeing multiple adaptations layered on top of each other in a single organism.
That is the end of the lecture 1. You now have some time to answer the questions. Lecture 2. You will hear part of a lecture about economics. Market equilibrium theory. First, you have some time to look at the 6 questions. Now listen carefully and answer the questions.
Good morning, everyone. Today's lecture is going to focus on one of the most foundational concepts in all of microeconomics, market equilibrium. Now, the word equilibrium comes from the Latin for equal balance, and that's essentially what we're talking about, a state of balance in a market where the quantity of a good that producers want to sell exactly equals the quantity that consumers want to buy. At this point, the market clears. There's no surplus, no unsold inventory piling up, and there's no shortage, no frustrated consumers who want to buy but can't find the product. The price at which this balance occurs is called the equilibrium price, and the corresponding quantity is called the equilibrium quantity. To understand how equilibrium is reached, we need to revisit the law of demand and the law of supply. The law of demand tells us that, all else being equal, as the price of a good rises, the quantity demanded by consumers falls, and vice versa. Consumers are sensitive to price. A higher price means some buyers exit the market because the good is no longer worth it to them. The law of supply tells us the opposite from the producer's perspective. As price rises, producers are willing and able to supply more of the good, because higher prices make production more profitable. So we have these two opposing forces, demand pulling price down, supply pushing it up, and equilibrium is the price point where they balance out. Graphically, this is the intersection of the supply curve and the demand curve. What happens when the market is not at equilibrium? This is where things get interesting. Suppose the current market price is above the equilibrium price. At that higher price, producers want to supply a large quantity, but consumers aren't willing to buy as much, so we get a surplus. Now, rational producers don't want unsold inventory, so they begin to lower their prices. As prices fall, consumers buy more and producers supply less, and the market moves back toward equilibrium. The reverse happens when price is below equilibrium. We get a shortage, consumers compete for the scarce good, and this competition drives prices back up. This self-correcting mechanism is what economists call the invisible hand, a term first used by Adam Smith, referring to the idea that markets tend to naturally move toward equilibrium without any central coordination.
Student, Professor Okafor, what about situations where the government sets a price? Like rent control, doesn't that prevent the market from reaching equilibrium?
That's a really important application, and yes, you're exactly right. When a government imposes a price ceiling, a maximum legal price below the equilibrium price, as in rent control, the market cannot self-correct upward. The price is artificially held below where supply and demand would naturally balance. The result is a persistent shortage. More people want apartments at the controlled rent than landlords are willing to provide. Conversely, a price floor, a minimum legal price set above equilibrium, like a minimum wage, creates a persistent surplus, in this case an excess of labor, or in economic terms, unemployment. These are examples of what we call price controls, and they're a classic case study in how intervention, even well-intentioned, can produce unintended consequences by preventing the market's self-correcting mechanism from functioning. Now, equilibrium is not a static, permanent state. Markets are constantly shifting because the conditions that determine supply and demand are always changing. A change in consumer income, a shift in tastes, a new technology, a change in input costs, any of these can shift either the demand curve or the supply curve, moving the equilibrium to a new point. For example, if consumer income rises and the good in question is a normal good, demand increases, the demand curve shifts to the right, and the new equilibrium will have both a higher price and a higher quantity. Economists call the analysis of how equilibrium changes in response to such shifts comparative statics. It's one of the most powerful tools we have for predicting how markets will respond to real-world events.
That is the end of the lecture 2. You now have some time to answer the questions. Lecture 3. You will hear part of a lecture about environmental science. Coral reef ecosystems. First, you have some time to look at the 6 questions. Now listen carefully and answer the questions.
Let's talk today about coral reef ecosystems, often called the rainforests of the sea, and for good reason. Though coral reefs cover less than 1% of the ocean floor, they support approximately 25% of all known marine species. That extraordinary biodiversity is possible because of a unique and ancient symbiotic relationship at the very foundation of the reef. The reef itself is built by coral polyps, tiny, soft-bodied animals related to jellyfish. These polyps secrete calcium carbonate skeletons, and over thousands of years, the accumulated skeletons of countless generations of polyps form the massive, complex, three-dimensional limestone structures we recognize as coral reefs. Now, here's something that surprises many students: coral polyps actually have very limited ability to photosynthesize on their own. The secret to the reef's extraordinary productivity lies in a symbiotic relationship between the coral and microscopic algae called zooxanthellae, spelled zooxanthellae, which live within the tissues of coral polyps. The zooxanthellae photosynthesize using sunlight and provide the coral with up to 90% of its energy needs in the form of sugars and other organic compounds. In return, the coral provides the algae with shelter and the carbon dioxide and nutrients they need for photosynthesis. This mutualistic relationship is so productive that it allows coral reefs to thrive in the nutrient-poor tropical waters where they are typically found, an outcome that might otherwise seem paradoxical. Unfortunately, this foundational symbiosis is also the reef's greatest vulnerability. When ocean temperatures rise even slightly, just 1 to 2 degrees Celsius above the normal summer maximum, coral polyps become stressed and expel their zooxanthellae. Without the algae, the coral loses its main energy source and its color, revealing the white calcium carbonate skeleton beneath. This is what we call coral bleaching. A bleached coral is not immediately dead, it's severely weakened and can recover if temperatures return to normal quickly, but if the elevated temperature persists, the coral will starve and die. Mass bleaching events, which are becoming more frequent and severe as ocean temperatures rise due to climate change, threaten reefs on a global scale.
Student, so, is ocean temperature the only threat? I've also heard about ocean acidification. Is that separate from bleaching?
Yes, very much so. These are two distinct but related threats, both driven by increased atmospheric CO2. Bleaching, as we discussed, is caused by thermal stress. Ocean acidification is a different process. As the ocean absorbs more CO2 from the atmosphere, it forms carbonic acid, which lowers the ocean's pH. A more acidic ocean contains fewer carbonate ions, which are the building blocks of coral skeletons. This means corals are forced to expend significantly more energy to build and maintain their calcium carbonate structures, and in very acidic conditions, existing reef structures can actually begin to dissolve. So coral reefs face a double threat: warmer temperatures trigger bleaching and mortality, while increasing acidity undermines the physical structure of the reef itself. These stressors can operate simultaneously and reinforce each other. Beyond temperature and acidification, reefs are also degraded by local human pressures. Overfishing removes key species like parrotfish and sea urchins that graze on algae and prevent algae from overgrowing and smothering corals. Agricultural runoff introduces excess nutrients that trigger algal blooms. And physical damage from coastal development and destructive fishing practices like blast fishing or cyanide fishing directly destroys reef structure. Conservation efforts therefore need to address both global drivers, primarily CO2 emissions, and local stressors simultaneously. Research suggests that reefs with lower local stress loads are more resilient to bleaching events, meaning local conservation can buy critical time while the global community works to reduce emissions.
That is the end of the lecture 3. You now have some time to answer the questions. That is the end of the TOEFL iBT listening test. You now have some time to review your answers.
Hey people, how was your test? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or you'll be missing out on some serious fun. See you tomorrow!